The first thing she noticed when she stepped inside was the silence. Not the cozy, warm kind of silence that welcomes you into a peaceful place, but the sharp, heavy silence that pricks the skin and presses down on your chest. Every head in the rundown cafe turned toward her as though she had carried a storm in with her. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Forks and spoons froze halfway to mouths, and she, already trembling, already trying to stay invisible, felt her legs weaken beneath the weight of those stares. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the idea that every soul deserves to be seen for who they are beyond their scars and mistakes, then please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us spread stories that can change lives. Her name was Eliza. Just a year ago, she had been someone entirely different, someone who laughed easily, who painted in sunlit corners, who believed in love as though it were written in the fabric of the universe. But life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. A car accident had stolen her parents in a single night, leaving her not only with grief, but with scars that ran across her face and down her neck. The skin grafts could never fully disguise the burns, and the pitying looks she received from strangers became unbearable. Eliza withdrew. She stopped meeting friends, stopped painting, and stopped believing in her own worth. The man beside her, however, refused to let her fade. His name was Daniel. He wasn't her boyfriend, nor her brother, nor anyone who owed her loyalty. He was a quiet presence who had been there on the worst night of her life, a paramedic, who had pulled her from the wreckage when she was convinced she wouldn't survive. Since then, he had kept showing up, not every day, not in ways that drew attention, but in the steady, consistent rhythm of someone who saw her, not her scars. He became the only person who could coax her out of her silence. On that cold autumn afternoon, when he invited her to join him for coffee, she hesitated. She hadn't been inside a public place in months. She was tired of the whispers, the stares, the way people's eyes darted away quickly, pretending not to notice her broken skin. But something in his voice made her agree against her own instincts. She thought maybe, just maybe, it was time to try again. The cafe he chose wasn't the polished, modern kind with glowing lights and perfect decor. It was an old, run-down place, the kind of spot where chairs wobbled and the paint on the walls peeled in faint strips. Yet there was something oddly safe about it, as though the walls themselves had seen too many stories and no longer judged anyone. But as soon as Eliza stepped in, the weight of silence hit. Everyone stared, not out of cruelty at first, but out of shock, because in that small town, her story was known. They remembered the girl she used to be, and they saw the woman she had become. Eliza's heart hammered as she followed Daniel to a corner table. She could hear the whispers begin, the subtle, sharp-edged words people thought she couldn't hear. That's her. The accident. Poor thing, ruined. Each word sliced into her like glass. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles went white, wishing she could disappear. Daniel, calm as always, ordered coffee and spoke to her in that steady voice of his, pretending nothing was wrong. But she couldn't focus on him. She wanted to run. She wanted to leave before the tears that threatened to burn her eyes gave the people the satisfaction of knowing they'd broken her spirit even further. And then, in the middle of her panic, something unexpected happened. An old woman stood up. Her hands trembled as she held onto her cane, but her voice was steady as she addressed the room. Why are you all staring as though she is less than you? The cafe grew even quieter. The old woman's eyes found Eliza, and they softened. I remember this girl. She used to paint the most beautiful sunrises on the windows of the art shop. Do you know what courage it takes to walk into a place when you feel the world has turned against you? Shame on all of you for making her feel small. The silence broke. Some people looked away in guilt. Others shifted uncomfortably. And then, almost like a ripple, kindness began to spread. A man at another table lifted his coffee cup toward Eliza in a silent toast. A young girl smiled shyly. The cafe owner, a weary middle-aged woman, walked over with 2 steaming slices of pie and said on the house, "For both of you." For the first time in months, Eliza felt the weight on her chest lift, just a little. Her hands stopped trembling. She looked at Daniel, who only nodded as if to say, "See? You belong here. But the most powerful moment was yet to come. A boy no older than 12 walked up to her table. He carried a notebook in his hands, the edges frayed, the pages covered in drawings. He hesitated, then placed it in front of her. "I draw," he mumbled, staring at the floor. "But people laugh at me. My mom said you used to paint. Can you look?" Eliza opened the notebook and her breath caught. The boy's sketches weren't polished, but they were raw and alive with emotion. She saw herself, in him, the same vulnerability, the same hunger for expression. Slowly, she smiled. The first genuine smile she had allowed in a long time. "These are beautiful," she whispered, her voice unsteady but sincere. The boy's eyes lit up, and for Eliza, something broke open inside her. She realized that even through her pain, her presence still mattered. Her scars had not erased her gift. Her voice, her encouragement, still had the power to lift someone else. And in that realization, the darkness that had wrapped around her heart loosened its grip. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in ways she couldn't have imagined. People who had once whispered approached her table, not with pity, but with quiet apologies, with kind words, with stories of their own struggles. The old woman told her about losing her husband to illness and how loneliness nearly destroyed her until she started knitting scarves for orphan children. A man spoke of losing his business and starting over. One by one, the strangers in the cafe transformed from silent judges into fellow travelers on the difficult road of life. By the time Eliza and Daniel left, the cafe no longer felt hostile. It felt like a sanctuary, a place where brokenness was not hidden but shared, where scars did not define a person but became proof of survival. As the door closed behind her, Eliza inhaled the crisp evening air and felt, for the first time in a long time, that maybe she could live again. That night, she pulled out her old paint. The canvas stood waiting in the corner of her room, untouched for too long. Her hand trembled as she lifted the brush, but once the colors began to flow, she couldn't stop. She painted not the flawless beauty of the world as she once had, but the broken, jagged, breathtaking resilience of it. She painted her scars, the cafe, the boy with the notebook, the old woman with the cane, and Daniel's steady eyes. And as she painted, she realized she was no longer just creating art, she was healing. Weeks passed. Eliza returned to the cafe, not once, but again and again. Each time, the silence was gone. People greeted her with warmth. They brought their children to show her drawings. They asked her advice. Slowly, she began teaching art lessons in the back corner of the cafe, turning the rundown space into a little haven of creativity and courage. The boy who had shown her his notebook became her first student, and under her guidance, his drawings grew bolder. Eliza never forgot the stares, the silence, the pain. But she also never forgot the moment the silence broke, the moment kindness spoke louder than judgment. It became her mission to remind others that scars are not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter. And Daniel, he remained by her side, not as a savior, but as a steady friend, someone who knew that true healing is not about erasing the past, but about finding the strength to carry it with grace. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can turn silence into hope, then please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need this message today. Your engagement helps us continue creating stories that matter. Before you go, I have a special request. Comment below with the word "scars off stories" if you believe that every struggle can be transformed into strength. Because in the end, Eliza's story is not just hers, it belongs to all of us who have faced silence, who have felt judged, and who, in one brave moment, chose to step back into the world anyway.